So pleased that Anthony Jenkins, my colleague, is here. He is a U.S. Air Force chaplain, captain, currently serving in the 11th Wing, located at the Joint Base at Anacostia Boiling in Washington, D.C. Previously, he served for 10 years in the U.S. Army, 5 years in Army bands, and 5 years in the Army's Chaplain Corps. He's a native of Washington, D.C., and is also called Pennsylvania, Virginia, upstate New York, and Southern Maryland home. He holds a Bachelor of Arts in Music Performance from Morgan State University and a Master of Divinity from Meadville Lombard Theological School, which is our UU Identity Seminary in Chicago. Anthony was ordained in 2017 at the UU Congregation of Columbia, Maryland, where he served for 7 years as first the intern minister and then as the assistant minister. I think it's fair to say, Anthony, that your ordination is still described as legendary. He played a lot of the music for his ordination, and he's not going to be able to play today. Maybe we can have you back sometime to do both music and preaching maybe as well. But wait, there's more. A few more quick things. He's also served as a chaplain at Johns Hopkins Bayview Hospital in Baltimore. And this August, he transitions from full-time military chaplaincy active duty to part-time military chaplaincy reserves and will begin serving as the minister at Paint Branch UU Church in Hyattsville, Maryland. I'm so excited for Anthony and so excited for Paint Branch. And Anthony, his wife Sarah, and their 2 children currently reside in Ellicott City. So again, welcome.
Everybody all right so far? As a child, my heart was quite fond of David Letterman's top 10 lists. So in that spirit, I'll offer you the top 10 things you never knew about military chaplains and the proud few who are UU. Number 1, first things first. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Anybody know what this is? So says the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution's Bill of Rights, affectionately known as the Establishment Clause. Free exercise of religion, separation of church and state. Evidently, faith was the first thing on the founders' minds and hearts of the first statement of the nation to be. If only abolishing slavery and or not abolishing the indigenous Native American population had also been a first thing in the first place. But at least, at long last, the football team in our nation's capital, my hometown of Washington, D.C., has rightly amended their name, Commanders, in place of the previous abomination. Better late than never. June 14th, 1775, one whole year before the Constitution, the Continental Congress established the Continental Army. First military job, warrior, infantry, rifleman. July 29th, 1775, just a month and a half later, Congress established the job of military chaplain. I suspect some part of those statements' hearts knew all too well that war is hell, and that their country's warriors would need some first-class holy comforters to nurture spirits, care for the wounded, and honor the fallen and their families. Fun fact, the first official U.S. military chaplain served in the Revolutionary War and died in service, the Reverend William Emerson, Unitarian pastor of Boston's First Church and grandfather of Ralph Waldo Emerson. So you know, as far as military chaplains go, we UUs were the first thing first. All right. 2, second things first. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So says the Constitution's Second Amendment, though there are many second thoughts and strong feelings about this right about now. My most recent assignment was in the Second Amendment, AKA constitutional carry state of Texas. No license, permit, background check, or training necessary to carry an open or concealed weapon. No regulations. Were it not for the right of people to bear high-powered assault rifles, 19 children, 3rd and 4th graders, and 2 teachers gunned down at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, 2 years ago this week, 80 miles from my last office, might still be alive to play this Memorial Day. According to the Gun Violence Archive, there have been 652 school shootings in the US since Uvalde, just school shootings. 124 mass shootings so far in 2024, and it's only May. On the other hand, were it not for the people in the well-regulated militia called the Union Army, bearing arms in the Civil War, my ancestors and I might still be enslaved property. For many Americans, their first thought and second thought is to fight firearms with firearms. Their answer to more gun violence is more guns in the hands of law-abiding, upright citizens, though this seems to be only as true as your hue. Law-abiding, upright citizens who are legally registered and licensed weapons for self-defense who are black and brown seem more likely to end up in white chalk outlines, even when we haven't touched our weapons, even when our arms and hands are up, even when we have committed no actual crime. See Philando Castile or Senior Airman Roger Fortson. On the other hand, weapon-wielding whites seem to have the right to overbear arms and live to tell the tale, to murder defenseless souls in cold blood and get arrested peacefully and carefully and get every bit of their Fifth Amendment due process. See Dylan Roof, Emmanuel AME in Charleston, or Peyton Gendron, Tops Friendly Market, East Buffalo. In any case, Congress first established warriors to embody the Second Amendment. Then, secondly, Congress established military chaplains to embody the First Amendment for those warriors. Nearly 250 years later, we military chaplains are still seconding that motion. Number 3, love is a battlefield. Military chaplains are non-combatants, courtesy of the 1864 Geneva Conventions, so we do not carry weapons. We do not so much as touch weapons. While we embrace our warrior spirits with open arms and are right beside them, stateside, overseas, under fire, in harm's way, and or outside the wire, we do so unarmed. Military chaplaincy is not for the faint of heart. Due respect to Psalm 23, it is one thing to walk through the valley of the shadow of death and fear no evil when you are carrying a sword or a shield. It is a very different thing to march fearlessly into those evil shadows bearing only your light. Thankfully, in 1909, Congress saw the light and established the military job of chaplain assistant, warriors who exist primarily to be their chaplain's shield and sword. In chess terms, they are the knights who ensure that we bishops, saints, get back home safely to our rooks and the loved ones inside. In total, 419 US military chaplains have died in the line of duty. Yet, amazingly, only 2 have been killed in action since 1970. And all the harm and danger that we modern era chaplains never see is largely because our chaplain assistants see it first. Number 4, holy water. Perhaps the most memorable and memorial US military chaplain moment was by dawn's early light, February 3rd, 1943. In the heart of World War II, 4 young Army chaplains, 1 Jewish, 1 Catholic, 1 Methodist, and 1 Dutch Reformed were aboard the SS Dorchester when it was torpedoed by a German sub and began sinking. In below freezing water, 4 chaplains ranging from ages 31 to 42 helped other soldiers board lifeboats and gave up their own life jackets when the supply ran out, saving 4 other lives. Chaplains joined arms, said prayers, and sang hymns as they went down with the ship, killed in action. All of those fallen chaplains had hearts waiting for them back at home, families of origin and families of choice. 3 of them had spouses and children. 1 of them had a baby on the way in utero, a few moments before its birth at the time of his death. When I was a chaplain without my own family, I used to ask myself if that was a sacrifice I could make. Now that I have 3 hearts at home, I'm not sure that's a sacrifice I should make. Also in that Dorchester scenario, the chaplains are arguably much more valuable alive. As the troops who survived the traumas of being torpedoed, their ship sinking in freezing water in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere, and the sight, sound, smell of some of their closest friends drowning right beside them, would definitely need some chaplains to help them try to process all of that, then go fight a war, then get back home and not take it out on their loved ones. Nevertheless, their memory is near and dear to the heart of every military chaplain every February 3rd, which is For Chaplains Day, and every Memorial Day, and every other day in the year. 5, rank by rank, again we stand. Military chaplains have rank, but not command. We certainly give our share of commands, not that anybody follows them. We just don't ever have command responsibility. Commanders are responsible for everything their unit and every unit member is, has, and does or fails to do, 24/7, 365. No, thank you. In any case, chaplains are commissioned officers, able to rise potentially all the way to the rank of 2-star general or admiral, which is the pay grade of 08. Proud to say that 2 of our UU chaplains, our OG Navy chaplain Cynthia Kane and Air Force chaplain Kalani Kasela, are rising stars who both made the well-deserved grade of 06 last year. Regardless of rank, troops usually call a chaplain, chaplain, which gives you a kind of moral authority, even if you are a lowly 01, which I have been. However, in the way that a medic must earn the title doc, chaplain must earn their unit's possessive pronouns. So, the moment when you are unofficially promoted from the chaplain to my chaplain feels timelessly heartwarming every time. So, why are chaplains officers? First, because we are one of the commander's trusty personal staff advisors, the subject matter expert for all things religious, spiritual, moral, and/or ethical. Second, our rank affords us the authority and autonomy to care for the highest and lowest ranking souls and all in between, while also empowering us to advocate for their spiritual needs and religious accommodations. Rank does have its privileges, one of which is a chaplain's power to speak truth to power and privilege when the moment calls for it. We are our commander's conscience, the guardian angel on the right shoulder. One might argue that the judge advocate, the commander's legal advisor, is the devil's advocate, the demon on the left shoulder. Of course, an accusation like that might land a person in some legal trouble, punishable by the Uniform Code of Military Justice, so I would never suggest such a thing. 6, Lord, I want to be in that number. The US military is roughly 0.6% of the US population. 330 million-ish US citizens, 2 million-ish US service members. All 6 armed forces, all 3 components, active duty, reserve, and guard, 0.6%. And yet, just about every age, religion, race, ethnicity, nationality, class, gender, sexual orientation, political affiliation, and socioeconomic status in the country and on planet Earth is represented in that 0.6%. We embody our country's unofficial first motto, e pluribus unum, out of many, one. Many US troops join long before they are even US citizens, serve with brave-hearted valor, risking their lives to protect rights and freedoms they don't even technically have yet. Many of them say the worst neighborhood in this country, the US, is exponentially more possibility and opportunity than the best neighborhood in their home country. So yes, there is a chance they could die here, but there is often a much greater chance they would have died there. A handful of my current troops were born and raised in the Ukraine, a few from Palestine. While they were at basic training, heartbreakingly, all hell was breaking loose at home. So in marching into the US military, they were, in a sense, playing the percentages, saying essentially, Lord, I want to be in that number. And so far, so good. Number 7, there is more love somewhere. For what it's worth, most souls march into the military seeking more financial opportunity, more community, identity, life purpose, stability, security, education, and/or citizenship, seeking more ability to love, more of, as Stephen Sondheim's West Side Story lyric goes, peace and quiet and open air somewhere. Very few join to kill people and break stuff. On the inside, military members surely don't always love the policy, the politics, or the interests of the state any more than you always agree with the philosophies of the powers that be at your job, but you still go to work. We in the military certainly have our share of in-house injustices, and while JAG embodies the military's legal justice, chaplains, particularly UU chaplains, embody its social justice. While many of our civilian UU ministers' counterparts are in the 99% rightly raging against the machine, marching outside in the public squares at the rallies and the protests, we are raging inside the machine. We are the saints, the bishops marching in the private square with VIP seats at the power table. Progressive, welcoming voices who have the ears of the queens and kings, commanders, and can advise moves that help the nation avoid its own spiritual checkmate, while also shining love's light inside the very impressionable minds and hearts of the youngest pawns, that they might walk through the valley of death's shadows and live to tell the tale. And if and when those young soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardmen, and/or Space Guardians die, we military chaplains have the sacred charge of crafting and delivering their memorial services, speaking to the heart of their life stories and sacrifice, helping their loved ones' hearts march into a bit of peace and comfort. There is no greater part of the job I love than this. Number 8, the few, the proud. The US military has about 6,000-ish military chaplains total. How many would you guess are UU? 20. That's right. That's it. For the whole military, we 20-something UU few know each other very well, very well. We are a beloved community in every way. We range from 20-something to 50-something in age, 01 to 06 in rank, a fittingly diverse rainbow connection of sexes, genders, races, birthplaces, family pictures, etc. All of us are legit UU. Some of us further identify as UU Christian, some UU pagan, some with Jewish roots, others with Buddhist or humanist branches. Grateful to have UU chaplains in all 6 military branches currently. Only half of us are active duty. The other half are reserve or guard, but each one of us is very rarefied air. For example, there's only one active duty UU chaplain of color in the entire United States Air Force. Can you guess who that might be? Fun fact, the Army's first ever Buddhist chaplain was Chaplain Thomas Dyer, who is now also ordained in the UU tradition and falls in with us. And the first ever Hindu chaplain in the US military, Chaplain Pratim Dharm, also became dual ordained as UU and marched in with our UU military chaplain circle for a while and is now serving UU parishes richly since her retirement from the military. So, you know, as far as military chaplains go, we UUs are still the first things first. And evidently, we are also the first place, second place. Think about this. Laugh about it later when you get home. Discuss it in your vehicles. 9, nuns. The fastest growing religious preference in the US and in the US military is none. Not N-U-N, but N-O-N-E. As in no religious preference, most often spiritual but not religious. The majority of troops still identify a preference of some sort, Methodist, Buddhist, etc., but the trend is and has been for years that more and more hearts are inclined to check the none box. For what it's worth, most US military chaplains are white, cisgender, male, Christian, evangelical, Protestant, and that is always the fastest growing religious preference in the chaplain corps. And for what it's worth, most of these chaplains are good people with big hearts, who live to love on warriors just as much as we UUs do. And generally speaking, most have love for us, even if they don't particularly love our theology. Generally speaking, we also have love for them, even if we don't particularly love their theology. Truth be told, most troops could care less what a chaplain's theology is. They mostly care about who and how a chaplain is. And ultimately, they just want a chaplain they can trust, whose heart lovingly helps them find home spiritually. Because even though the unit members are many, they have only one chaplain. 10, to each his own or her own or their own. Spoiler alert, generally speaking, among military chaplains, we UUs are thought of as the most out of the box, the most unorthodox, but not necessarily in a negative way. We're often the most able to work with warriors of all faiths or no faiths without judgment or theological prohibitions. And we're typically the least limited in being able to care for service members of all sexual preferences and genders without denominational restrictions. Ironically, we're chaplains with no religious preference of our troops. I like to think of us as O-negative chaplains. Universalist donors. Spiritual lifeblood that can be used for and transfused into any type in terms of counseling and pastoral care. Of course, that doesn't mean we are everybody's worship type. When troops desire a legit Roman Catholic Mass or Friday evening Shabbat, we call in the cavalry, chaplains from those traditions. On the flip side, when those chaplains have LGBTQ plus troops, transitioning troops, same-sex couples, interfaith couples, nuns, etc., we typically get called in, and we gladly fall in. I'm not saying there aren't some chaplains who are inhospitable and or downright hostile to us from time to time. There are. And there are civilian UUs who are just as inhospitable and or downright hostile to us from time to time. I'm saying most chaplains' hearts are in the right place, and we find ways to work together lovingly to do the most good for the most service members. Number 11, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. I know I said 10. Feel free to sue me. JAG can help you with that. Last, but definitely not least, one of the first things I noticed about all the bookcases in the chaplain's lounge area when I arrived at my last assignment was that all the books displayed on those cases were Bibles. I could say all scriptures are welcome in my lounge, but if there is only one displayed, the unspoken message for many is that only one is truly welcome. So I diversified the display accordingly out of my own pocket. To be clear, I didn't take away any Bibles. I just added some Qurans and Bhagavad Gitas and Dhammapadas and Tao Te Chings. This was my First Amendment, saying essentially, there is more love somewhere. That December, I arrived at my office to see the halls of the first floor hallway decked with Christmas decorations. Nice, welcoming slice of home for many students, no doubt. To be clear, unless you'd arrived here from a home that celebrates Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or solstice or Yule. So I diversified the display accordingly. Didn't take away any of the Christmasness, just bought a Hanukkah menorah and a Kwanzaa banner, and I diversified the display accordingly. This was my Second Amendment. There's more love somewhere. For me, my office is a metaphor for UU military chaplaincy. We embody the UU values of diversity and inclusion in the most diverse population on the globe. And our open-mindedness and open-heartedness is both deeply medicinal and unspeakably impactful. The last thing for you to know is the first thing. Military members are really just like you. And even if you don't support war, aim to wrap your hearts around the war fighters. After all, your freedom to disagree with everything the military stands for, as well as your free exercise of religion, freedom to assemble, and freedom of speech is made possible by the First Amendment, which is protected 24/7, 365 by some soldier, some sailor, some airman, some guardian, some Marine, or coastie standing watch, often far away from their home, who is willing to die for you. And some do. Enjoy the holiday tomorrow. However you choose to spend it, I invite you to spend a moment in gratitude for all of America's fallen warriors and their families, and with gladness that there are a few UUs in the uniform to help soften those blows. Amen? Amen.